Are you ready for some free legal advice? We can hear the roosters, but it's never too early to know your rights. Feel free to call into the show in the next 25 minutes with questions of your own. Just dial 877-850-8585. Without further ado, here is the host of Vastola on the Law, Attorney Jeff Vastola.
Happy New Year, everybody, and thank you so much for tuning in. This is 30 minutes of free legal advice, otherwise known as Vastola on the Law. I'm here to give you free legal advice every Saturday morning, 7:30 to 8 o'clock. You can sit back and listen, or if you have a question of your own, you can call into the show. The number is 877-850-8585. Call early enough. If you call at the end of the show, we have to tell you to call next week. But give me anything you want. And if I can answer your question right here and right now, then that's what I will do. If I cannot answer your question right here and right now, then I will do the research I have to do and get back with you the following week. If Joyce is out there listening, I just sent you a message, Joyce. I'm going to be addressing your question that you emailed me about in just a few minutes. The question is whether you can utilize an argument referred to as reasonable cause to seek tax relief. I'll be very honest with everybody that's listening. This is well outside of my comfort zone because this is more of a tax question and perhaps even a legal tax question than anything. But because Joyce reached out to me, I decided to look into it, and I'll be bringing that information in just a few minutes. And also 5 new laws that are enforceable in the state of Florida. I'll be talking about those in just a couple of minutes as well. Starting January 1st, 2020, we have 5 new laws that you should be aware of. If you'd like to talk to me outside of this radio show, if you think you have a case that you'd like to talk to me about, you can call me anytime, at night, on the weekend. It does not matter to me. The number to use, if you'd like to talk to me privately, is 833-VASTOLA. That's 833-827-8652. That number is forwarded to my cell phone 24/7, and I'm happy to receive calls at that number, obviously. If I'm not able to answer your phone call, leave me a message and I will call you back. If you have a case that's been declined by other attorneys, but in your gut you feel as though you have a case and you want to talk to another attorney about it, feel free to give me a call. I'm happy to do that. If I agree with all the others and tell you I don't think you have a case, at least I will explain to you why. I know sometimes lawyers don't do that. And or perhaps you've received a very vague letter saying, not giving a lot of explanation as to perhaps why your case has been declined. And believe it or not, that's something that's taught in law school. Don't paint yourself into a corner with explanations as to why somebody doesn't have a case, which I don't necessarily believe in, but I will always explain to somebody at least my opinions as to whether they have a case or not and why. If something happens and you're in a situation where you feel as though you need some legal advice right away, use that number, 833-VASTOLA. That's why it's there, because sometimes people have questions from the scene of an incident or whatever it may be. So I'm happy to talk to you. If it's outside of my area, I could certainly try to find an attorney that will help you. And if it's not something that you're interested in hiring somebody, don't feel as though you can't use the phone number. I tell people all the time that 833-VASTOLA number is there. It's a no obligation phone call. You don't have to feel as though you have to hire me just because you're calling the number. So if you'd like to find out more about me, I'll tell you I'm Jeff Vastola. I'm an attorney. I've been a lawyer for 23 years plus, and I have offices in Palm Beach County and Stewart, Palm Beach Gardens, and up in Stewart on US 1. Our website address is www.vastolalegal.com. If you'd like to find out more about us, you can go to the website, and you can email me directly from the website, filling out the, if you have an inquiry, that inquiry form is forwarded directly to me. So you always have direct access to me either via email or via the telephone number. I try to make myself as accessible as possible. Monday through Friday, I handle personal injury and wrongful death claims. So if you have a case that you think you'd be interested in discussing with me, feel free to reach out. So, my show today, remember, I encourage you to call in with questions of your own. It's been quiet. It's been quiet the last several weeks, and I know that typically happens during the holiday season, but we are now into the new year. Happy New Year, everybody. I hope everyone had a wonderful Christmas and holiday season, and I hope they had a safe New Year. If you have something going on in your world and you just don't know how to deal with it from a legal perspective, call me. You don't have to call me about personal injury and wrongful death. You can call me about bankruptcy. You can call me about family law. You can call me about wills and trusts. Not that I know everything about all of these things, but if I don't know the answer, then I will research the issue and get back to you. So you are free to call me with any question you have, because this is free legal advice. The number to call into the radio show is 877-850-8585. Elliot will take your call. He will whisper in my ear who is on the line, and we will put you live on the air. Just mind your P's and Q's. We don't want to hear the names of your neighbors or the company that you're displeased with and want to sue. But I can certainly give you some advice or some guidance on what to do next. If you live in the state of Florida, or perhaps if you're just visiting, we still have a lot of visitors here because school doesn't start until next week, be aware. As of January 1st, several new laws went into effect, but the one that is probably catching the most attention is the fact that you can no longer text and drive. Now, understand, it was illegal to text and drive before this new law went into effect, but it was a lot like that seatbelt law. You may remember that in the past, police officers, if they saw you not wearing a seatbelt, and that was the only infringement, they couldn't pull you over for it. Well, ultimately that law changed, and now they can pull you over if they see that you're not wearing a seatbelt. Well, the same thing for texting and driving. It used to be that if an officer saw you texting and driving, but that was the only infringement, they couldn't pull you over for that. Now, don't ask me why the law starts out like that. That's a question that I just can't answer. But that has changed. Now, if texting and driving is the only infringement that an officer sees, that officer can pull you over and give you a ticket, a moving violation. So you'll have to pay the ticket. First time offense is $30 plus court fees. A second offense is $60 plus court fees unless you were found to be texting and driving in a school zone. And if that's the case, then the first time offense is $60 plus court fees and 3 points on your license. So remember, you don't want to accumulate those points because that can result in a suspended license. So there are some caveats to this new law. For example, if your vehicle is stopped, you can text and drive if your vehicle is not moving. The exception, again, there's an exception to the exception. Don't do it in a school zone. If an officer sees you utilizing your phone in any way in a school zone, whether you're moving or stopped, you're going to get a ticket. All right, so don't do it in a school zone. That just makes obvious sense. You need to be looking out for the kiddies. So what else? Let me see. You can use Bluetooth devices even while you're moving. If you're utilizing a Bluetooth device in a school zone, just make sure that you're not manipulating anything with your hands. Okay, because that would result, again, in the ticket. There's a little bit more to the law. If you're interested, feel free to call in. Let me know. I don't have the full body of the law in front of me, but I've got the highlights here. If you want to know more about it, call into the show. We can talk. 877-850-8585. If you're curious to know what other traffic laws are out there, there's a whole host of traffic laws. The Florida statute on motor vehicle laws is probably one of the lengthiest statutes in the entire book. So I might pick and choose from some of those in the near future. They're always good to know. Another new law for Florida, and this is a Florida law, is that Florida's minimum age is going to increase by, 10 cents an hour. It's going from $8.46 to $8.56 for those that get paid by the hour. Now, if you are a tipped worker, your minimum salary is going to go from $5.44 to $5.54 an hour. That's pretty significant. I remember when I was a waiter, I worked in restaurants when I was in college and law school, and I think my minimum wage was $2.20, something like that. And of course, the tips make up for it. But I remember I would get those hourly paychecks. You probably pick them up like once a month from your employer, and the grand total for a month of wages would be like $50 or something like that. The legal age to smoke, this is law number 3, goes from 18 to 21 nationally. Understand, this is a law that's applicable in Florida, because when federal laws are passed, federal laws are enforceable in every state, but this is a federal law that was passed, and it now increases the smoking age from 18 to 21, keeping in mind that there are several counties in the state of Florida that who are self-governing in their own right have increased the age from 18 to 21 prior to this new federal law. So there was, interestingly enough, there was a bill in the Florida State House to increase the age from 18 to 21, but that was killed. That bill was killed by the House in May, according to the Tampa Bay Times. So for some reason, the Florida Senate wanted to increase the age as a state law, but the bill was killed. I don't know who killed the bill, but kill Bill. Who knows? If you'd like to call into the show because you have a question of your own, call 877-850-8585. I'm kind of sitting on the edge of my seat waiting for Joyce to call in because of her emails. We were messaging back and forth within the last couple of days about a tax question. So I'm going to save that for the last couple of minutes of the show. And there's a new flag that you will start to see waving in the air, especially in front of all governmental buildings. It's the Remembering Those Who Serve flag. It's been approved and will commemorate all those who have lost their lives in the United States Armed Forces. So there's a picture here on the internet website that I'm looking at. It's a very pretty flag, and that will start to be waving soon, or it should be now. It went into effect January 1st, so you probably see that flag nowadays. And lastly, this is the fifth and final new law that at least I'm going to be talking about this morning, is that you can have documents notarized electronically now. And notarization is a process where documents are formalized with a third-party signature attesting to the signature of the person who is on the document as the signor, kind of as a witness. It's more of like an official witness. Well, notarization used to be, in the old days, kind of a pain because it had to be face-to-face. The notary had to witness the signor signing on the document, and that was part of the process. The notary has to witness the signature. Well, now with this new law from the state of Florida, you can do it as long as there is an audio-video communication technology in place. Something like a FaceTime would probably suffice. But the notary still has to document the signature with not just witnessing the person signing the document, but they also have another form of ID proving that they are who they say they are. So typically, okay, did you say Edward, Elliot? Everett. Okay, let's put Everett on the line. Thank you. Everett, good morning.
Hey, good morning. Hi, I had a question.
Can you hear me, Everett?
Concerning this. Yes, can you hear me?
Yes. What can we do for you, sir?
Oh, hey, I heard you discussing this this new law that went into effect about texting and driving, and I had a question. Is it strictly texting or driving, or is it anything else you're doing with your phone? Let's say putting in an address for your Google Maps, and if you do get stopped, the officer says you're texting driving. How can he prove that you were texting if you say, no, I was doing something else, checking my email or something?
Well, here's the law.
How does that work? Do you know?
Here's the law. So there's two questions there. Let me answer the first question first. If you are manipulating your phone in any way, so it doesn't really matter what you're doing, if an officer sees you utilizing your hand or your fingers or your nose or whatever body part you want to use to manipulate your phone, that is going to be a violation of the law the way it's written.
I see.
Now, what's interesting
I see.
is the law does say, because when you pull up the law in the Florida statute, it's pretty lengthy actually, and it does make reference to the fact that if you're using your automobile's navigation system, that doesn't qualify as texting and driving, which to me, I don't understand for the life of me why they would have made that distinction. Because why does it matter if you're manipulating your phone as opposed to manipulating your onboard navigation system in your car, right? So
Right.
there's some, I think there's some kinks that they need to work out in the law. But to answer your question, if you're manipulating your phone in any way, it doesn't matter what app you're using, while you're moving,
I see.
or if you're in a school zone, even if you're stopped, it's going to be a violation of law. So the second question is, how are you going to prove it if it's just the officer's word versus yours? Well, that's the age-old, I didn't run through the stop sign, or I wasn't speeding. That boils down to a he said, she said between you and the officer in court, and you can imagine who's going to win and lose that argument every time.
Exactly. Okay. Well, I just thought since it's listed as texting and driving, I thought it was limited to just texting. And then
the actual law that I had pulled up back in, I think it was
Okay.
probably July or August when this
All right.
law first made a big splash, and I had the whole thing in front of me. It's like subsection 8 talks
Okay.
about, if you're manipulating the device for any reason at all, that's going to be a violation.
Okay. All right. Great. Now I know. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thanks for calling, Everett. Have a nice day, and Happy New Year. All right. Thank you, Elliot. Appreciate that. So I wanted to, as I mentioned, spend a few minutes at the end to talk about Joyce's question. Hopefully Joyce is listening. If not, she can pull up this audio in our audio library. I forgot to mention that. By the way, if you are interested in finding an old show, because perhaps I touched on something that was relevant and you want to go back and find it, if you go to the 850 AM website, you can find my show page. It's a little tricky to find, but I promise you it's there. You go to the 7:30 Saturday time slot and you'll see my show page. You click on my show page and you can pull up the audio library for every show that I've ever done on 850 AM. So another way to go back and try to find things that might be interesting or relevant to you. So I've got just about a few minutes left. Joyce contacted me, and it was really a question more for her son. And it was, well, my son had an illness, and you mentioned on your show that for reasonable cause, my son might be able to avoid tax penalties. And I went back and forth a couple of times to say, I really don't think that was me. There's a tax show that's on before this time slot on Sunday mornings, and I used to be on Sunday mornings at an earlier time slot, and as I was getting ready for my show, I would have my headphones on and I would listen to this tax show. I think it's called Levy, the Levy Tax Show. So I'm promoting the Levy Tax Show without really intending to do it, but it's a good show. If you have questions about tax liens and things like that and how to avoid tax penalties, tune in to the Levy Tax Show on Sunday mornings. But the issues that Joyce was asking me about are not something I've ever talked about before. So again, I just thought maybe she was confusing my show with the tax show. But I thought to myself, you know what? Why don't we look into it anyway and see if we can't help her out? So I did. I went to the internet, of course, and this is something that anybody, frankly, can do. You don't have to be a lawyer to do this. But what Joyce is referring to is a reasonable cause penalty abatement. And there are essentially 3 different reasons or bases as to go ahead and request the acronym is RCPA, why you would request a RCPA from the IRS. The first general category, so there's 3 general categories as to how you can go about doing this, is death, serious illness, or unavoidable absence. The next category is fire, casualty, or natural disaster. And third is kind of a general. It says unable to obtain records. So understand that if you're going to submit an RCPA to the IRS to try to avoid a tax obligation or to obtain some form of tax relief, the IRS evaluates your RCPA, your request for reasonable cause penalty abatement, on a case-by-case basis. Okay, they're not just going to lump you into a category and say, okay, you've requested it under this category, so yes, your request is approved. You're going to have to be very specific about why your specific request meets all of the elements under that specific category. And this website that I'm referring to, I want to give proper credit to who I'm borrowing from, Spalding Legal, and I don't even know where Spalding Legal is. Let me see if I can check on the contact page where Spalding Legal is. It's a 760 area code. I don't even think this is in Florida. California. Okay, Spalding Legal. So thank you to Spalding Legal for publishing this information on an RCPA so that I can help Joyce. Hopefully she's listening. This particular article makes reference to a case of Couch versus the IRS, essentially, where a claimant submitted a request for penalty abatement because of a illness. And the IRS examiner and the judge went through the case and evaluated not just his allegations of illness, but whether or not they were legitimate. And his case was denied, and the IRS denial was affirmed by the court because he didn't have sufficient proof, didn't have sufficient evidence to show the court that his allegation of illness was legit. He basically didn't substantiate it. So don't think that just because you're going to file something and you're going to say, oh, I had this illness, it's going to work. You basically, and it's funny because I read the case a little bit, and putting myself in the shoes of a personal injury lawyer, which I happen to be, so I'm wearing my own shoes, thinking, well, gosh, he went to trial pretty unprepared because his own doctor did not testify in his favor as to his disability and the fact that it was affecting him. I thought to myself, if I did that as a lawyer on behalf of my own client, I mean, that could be legal malpractice. So make sure that when you're going to present a case under any of these various categories that you've researched the category and that you're going to be able to prove it. Unable to obtain records, for example, it says here information needing to be submitted with your request would be, why were the records necessary for compliance? That's a good point, because if they weren't necessary to begin with, then it doesn't matter that they weren't available. Why were the records unavailable, and what steps did the taxpayer take to try and secure the records? Very fair question. When did the taxpayer become aware that they did not have the necessary records? Why the taxpayer did not try and estimate for the information? Did the taxpayer contact the IRS and ask, what should I do? Did the taxpayer comply once the missing information was received, if it ever was? Supporting documentation received during the course, trying to obtain the records. What did you do to try to get the records? You're going to have to substantiate that. And then kind of a catch-all where other avenues explored to try to obtain or replace the records. So those are the consequential things that the court's going to look at for the unable to obtain records exception. The fire, casualty, or natural disaster, just to mention a few, is obviously the taxpayer's residence has to be located in the covered disaster area. That makes sense. Taxpayer's tax documents were in that same covered area. Taxpayer's spouse is located within the covered disaster area when filing a joint return. And or the taxpayer is a relief worker assisting in a covered disaster area. That would be purposes of a delay. Let me see what else is in here. The one about death, serious illness, or unavoidable absence, because this is what Joyce contacted me asking about. Let me just cover these quickly. Elements that you would need to address: the date of death, dates, duration, and severity of the illness, or dates and reason for absence. How the event prevented the filing of the return, the estimated tax deposits from being made, or the paying of the balance due. Did the taxpayer return to promptly filing returns, making estimated tax deposits, or paying the balance due once the serious illness passed, they returned from absence, or their immediate family member passed? the relationship the taxpayer has to their immediate family member, and if other business obligations were impaired. And that would be covered under the corporate RCPA. So, there you have it, Joyce. I hope this helps you and your son. I'm sorry that your son is having health complications, which are causing tax complications. It's never a good thing when one situation causes difficulties in other areas, including the IRS, which is probably one of the most stressful. You're listening to Know Your Rights, Vastola on the Law, and my time is up. Happy New Year to everybody. If you have any questions at all between now and next Saturday morning, call me on my cell phone. That number is 833-VASTOLA, 833-827-8652. And remember, keep yourself out of trouble, have a wonderful New Year, and do the right thing. Bye-bye.
You've been listening to Vastola on the Law with attorney Jeff Vastola. Turn in next week for more legal advice and answers to your specific questions. You can call Jeff on his cell phone after the show by dialing 833-VASTOLA. That's 833-827-8652.